Tenkaichi 2. Activate the vibes. When you think about the music associated with Dragon Ball, you largely think of the orchestral tracks, or maybe the J-rock or J-pop tracks, or maybe the more subdued and darker tracks from Bruce Faulconer, which is my personal favourite. In Tenkaichi 2, however, for some reason the developers decided to go, fuck it, let's make some club bangers. And that's exactly what we got. Tenkaichi 2 is perhaps the only Dragon Ball game that has this techno, drum and bass, futuristic vibe. You've still got your rock tracks, but the majority of the songs are pretty unconventional when it comes to Dragon Ball. Even the options theme goes hard. Whenever you start a saga in the story mode, this banging drum and bass track starts playing while the narrator introduces you to the arc.
One after another, the Z-Fighters have succumbed to Cell's awesome might. Now, with no one left to stop the monster's onslaught, and with the fate of the world hanging in the balance, the weight of this monumental task now rests on Gohan's shoulders.
The tracks in this game are bouncy, they have a nice ambience to them, and they get you moving in a different type of way. Now, I sat there wondering why they decided to go in this direction, and I think there are a few reasons. First of all, we've got Future Trunks as the cover star of Tenkaichi 2, well, at least one of the covers. He's also in the menus. It could be that they decided to go for an aesthetic befitting of Future Trunks, so they went for a more electronic and techno-oriented sound to evoke feelings of the future. It could also be that they wanted to go for that early PS2 aesthetic, you know, that whole dark and digitalized vibe. And not just the PS2, you also have the Toonami aesthetic, which, if you remember, was heavily focused on that mechanical, cybernetic sound and vibe. It was very subdued and cold, but it was also really fucking cool and had a certain ambience to it, as if you're being taken into the future. I feel like a lot of the music in Tenkaichi 2 evokes those same feelings. Whatever the case, it's full of bangers. Even the character select theme goes hard. It's a pretty unconventional track that you wouldn't expect to hear in a character select screen, but it still goes hard all the same. You've got this bouncy beat mixed with various musical cultures. I can hear some Spanish flamenco influences, maybe even some Arab influences too. There's just a really cool energy to it and it gets you hyped to fight. Beyond that, you've got the gameplay, which was a massive improvement over Tenkaichi 1. It's faster, smoother, the air combat is way more dynamic, and you can also transform during fights now. The fights can sometimes go at a breakneck speed, almost matching the energy and rhythm of the music. It's almost like the music is encouraging you to play a hyper-aggressive playstyle, and thankfully the gameplay lets you do that due to how good it is. I sometimes sit there for an hour or two, just playing random fights and team battles because of how good the gameplay, music and atmosphere is in combination with each other. Sometimes even timing my transformations and ultimates when the music reaches a peak. I just love the music. It almost sounds like something you would hear in an older Tekken game. You know what? Let's test it out.
Round 1, fight.
Hell yeah. Sorry, I got a phone call. Hello? What's that? We have another banger incoming. Play the track. Wait, what the fuck? Sorry about that. Play the track. Beyond that, you have the story mode, which is extremely detailed. Perhaps the most detailed story in a Dragon Ball game, almost to a fault. The story goes from the Saiyan Saga all the way to the Shadow Dragon Saga, and I'm not joking. They have you playing every single fight. They got me playing as Krillin with his bald head. Look at the size of his head. They got me playing as the Jobber Squad, doing their little training battles before Nappa and Vegeta arrive. Yajirobe sighting. Professional gameplay. They also got me playing all the movies. During Caller's Revenge, they got me fighting Souza 5 times. I'm sure the 11 Souza fans out there are jumping for joy, but we don't need to fight him that many times. And the cutscenes largely consist of the characters just standing there and talking. But during the big moments of the arcs, we do get some really nicely animated scenes, so I'll give them credit there. You can also fly in between fights where you can purchase items, interact with people, and do some fights to level up your character, but I don't know. I didn't like the flying here as much compared to Budokai 3. Maybe it's because Budokai 3 had a lot more secrets and branching paths. For example, if you play Goku story mode again after completing it for the first time, during the Namek Saga, you can go and face Cooler instead of Frieza. You can come across Broly at some point. And during the Majin Buu Saga, you can actually branch off to a different path where you find the Super Saiyan 4 transformation and then you go on to fight Omega Shenron. There was more of an incentive to actually explore here rather than it just feeling like a glorified loading screen. But either way, on one hand you've got the story of Tenkaichi 2, which was extremely ambitious and detailed, and on the other hand you've got the other extreme in Tenkaichi 3, where the story is extremely condensed with you only playing a handful of fights. I guess they didn't want to just do the exact same story and fights again, which I understand, but it would be good to find a middle ground between the story of Tenkaichi 2 and 3, because I do think Tenkaichi 3 has the better cutscenes. While Tenkaichi 3 does have the better roster and is seen as the fan favourite, I think I like Tenkaichi 2 more because of the story, music, vibe, and for me personally, the gameplay too. Either way, anything's better than the half-assed story we got in Sparking Zero. I don't even want to talk about that. But yeah, I just wanted to make a video on Tenkaichi 2 because of how different it feels from the other Dragon Ball games, and that's largely due to the music and vibe. I actually want them to revisit the sound and aesthetic in a future game, and I think there's no better time to do that than for Xenoverse 3. The Xenoverse games are heavily focused on time travel and the future, and I think the context and nature of the game warrants them going back to a sound that befits that aesthetic. And that sound is the techno drum and bass oriented sound we got in Tenkaichi 2. It's probably too late to do that though, seeing that the game isn't too far away. If I have to be honest, I feel like the music of the newer Dragon Ball games are largely forgettable. So we need to start making some bangers again. Ironically, the Dragon Ball game that I think has the best soundtrack out of the modern games is Ultimate Tenkaichi. The music is genuinely top tier, and it's just a shame the gameplay isn't good. If they had kept the Tenkaichi or Raging Blast style of gameplay with the story they had for the game, because the story in Ultimate Tenkaichi is actually really well done, we could have had an all-timer Dragon Ball game. But yeah, that's for another time. Let me know what you think about Tenkaichi 2 and if you also liked the change in direction. Thank you for watching, feel free to subscribe, I'll catch you later.